What do you do when a single email from halfway across the world destroys everything you thought was yours? I got the divorce papers by email while I was still in the desert. 15 years of marriage ended in a PDF attachment. My name is Caleb Morrow, 45 years old, Staff Sergeant with the 1st Airborne. I'd been in Kannar Province for 6 months when Lydia decided she was done waiting. The subject line read, "Let's handle this maturely." The message itself was 3 sentences long. She'd already filed the paperwork. She'd already emptied our joint account. She'd already moved her new boyfriend, Dylan, into our house in Boise. The words burned into my retina, each one a grenade exploding the life I'd built. I read the email twice, closed my laptop, took a shower in the communal stall, got dressed for my shift, said nothing to anyone. The scalding water couldn't wash away the betrayal, only sharpen my resolve. When I got back to my bunk that night, I replied with one word: understood. That was it. No argument, no begging, no threats. Ramirez, my bunkmate, noticed something was off. "You good, man?" he asked, not looking up from his book, his voice cutting through the hum of the bass like a lifeline. "Yeah," I said. "Just some stuff back home." He nodded, and that was the end of it. Military guys know when to leave things alone, but his glance lingered, as if he sensed the storm I was hiding. Truth is, I wasn't surprised. 8 months before deployment, things had changed. Small things. Lydia stopped asking about my day, started working late at the medical clinic where she handled scheduling, started going to the gym 4 times a week, but never seemed to break a sweat. New clothes, new friends I never met, new passwords on her phone. Her laughter, once warm, turned sharp, reserved for people I didn't know. I didn't confront her, didn't start checking her messages or following her around. That's not who I am. But I wasn't blind either. So I made some quiet moves of my own. Nothing dramatic, just precautions. I secured important documents in a storage unit across town: birth certificate, marriage license, house deed with only my name on it thanks to the VA loan, military benefits paperwork. I moved my grandfather's ring and my mom's old china to the same unit, things that mattered. Each item locked away was a brick in the wall I was building against her betrayal. I also opened a separate account at a different bank and started diverting part of my pay there. Not enough that she'd notice, but enough that I wouldn't be starting from zero if things went south. The night before I deployed, she hugged me at the airport and said, "Stay safe, okay?" Her eyes were dry, like she was saying goodbye to a coworker, not a husband heading to war. Her embrace was cold, a performance for the crowd, not for me. I should have known then, but part of me still hoped I was wrong. I wasn't. What she didn't know was that I'd prepared for this moment. And what she didn't understand was that I never start fights, but I do finish them. The desert night pressed against the bunk, its silence amplifying the echo of Lydia's email. The faint hum of generators outside was a stark contrast to the chaos in my mind. My laptop sat closed, but the email's words lingered like a ghost. Kunnar's stars burned above, indifferent to the war I now faced at home. I was trained to survive ambushes, but this was a different kind of battle. Would Lydia's next move be a plea for forgiveness or a deeper cut? How do you love someone who's already planning to erase you? I met Lydia Harper at a friend's barbecue in 2012. I was home between tours, staying with my buddy Mason in Boise. She was finishing dental hygiene school but ended up working admin at a medical clinic instead. "Less pressure," she said. Her smile was electric, drawing me in like a moth to a flame, but even then I sensed a restlessness beneath it. We were married 10 months later. Lydia used to say she was proud of my service, though she never quite understood it. Her dad was a retail manager, her brother a software developer, no military in her family. She'd ask when I was going to get a real job, not realizing that after 17 years, the Army was my career, not just a job I was killing time at. Her questions stung, each one a reminder that my sacrifices were invisible to her. We bought our house in 2016. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. 2 bedrooms, small yard, quiet neighborhood. My name was the only one on the mortgage since the VA loan was in my name, but I added her to the deed because that's what married people do, share things. I thought it was a gesture of love, not a door she'd later exploit. My dad died a year after we got married, heart attack while mowing the lawn. My mom passed 2 years later, breast cancer, though she never smoked a day in her life. They left me some money, not a fortune, but enough that Lydia and I could pay off our car loans and still have a cushion. That cushion became her obsession, a fund she eyed while I was away. I deployed 5 times during our marriage, Iraq twice, Afghanistan 3 times. Each time I came home, Lydia seemed a little more distant, a little more restless, like she was playing a role she'd outgrown. Her eyes, once bright with promise, now flickered with impatience, as if I was holding her back. I didn't sign up to be a military wife, she told me once, after I mentioned possibly re-upping for another 3 years. I'm tired of being alone all the time. I understood that. I did. But the Army was the only place I ever felt like I truly belonged. I was good at my job. People depended on me. In 2021, things started changing. Small stuff at first. Lydia got irritated when I called during her book club nights, started talking about how her friend Cassandra had divorced her husband and was living her truth now, started making comments about how we didn't really have anything in common anymore. Her words were laced with contempt, as if my life was a burden she was forced to carry. I suggested counseling. She said we were fine, just going through a phase. Then came the late nights at work, the weekends away with friends I'd never met, the new clothes, the gym membership she rarely used. Her perfume changed, her smile reserved for her phone, not me. I should have confronted her, but that's not how I handle things. Never have. My dad taught me to think before I speak, to be sure before I act, so I watched, and I prepared quietly, because my gut was telling me something was coming, and in this life, you learn to trust your gut. But each ignored sign was a crack in my heart, a warning I couldn't fully silence. The memory of those months gnawed at me, each detail a puzzle piece I'd refused to assemble. The bunk's dim light cast harsh shadows, mirroring the doubts I'd buried. My phone sat silent, but Lydia's actions screamed louder than any call. Outside, Kunar's relentless heat pressed against the base, a reminder of the battles I faced both here and at home. I was ready to act, but the cost was becoming clearer. What would I lose by fighting back, and what would I gain? Can you survive a betrayal that's been planned in the shadows of your own home? 3 weeks after getting the divorce email, I was sitting in the mess hall when my phone buzzed. A notification from our bank app. Another withdrawal, $72,300.00, almost everything that was left. The numbers glared at me, a digital knife twisting in my gut. I set my fork down and opened the app. The joint account balance was down to $19.82. Our savings, $39,000.00 we'd built up over years, was gone, completely transferred to an account I didn't recognize. Sullivan, one of the guys from my unit, glanced over. Bad news? I locked my phone. Nah, just some account stuff. That night, I called our bank from the base phone center. Turned out Lydia had been moving money for weeks, small amounts at first, then larger ones. The big transfers started the day after I deployed. Each transaction was a step in her escape, meticulously planned while I was risking my life. I hung up and stood in the hallway for a long time, watching guys laughing, calling their kids, their wives, their parents. Normal life happening all around me while mine was burning down. That's when Ramirez found me. Heard from Torres that you looked like you'd seen a ghost at dinner, he said. What's up? I don't usually share personal stuff, but Ramirez had pulled me out of a bad situation in Kunar once. I trusted him. My wife emptied our accounts and moved her boyfriend into our house, I said. Sent divorce papers while I was on patrol last week. Ramirez didn't give me the usual, I'm sorry, or that's rough, or you'll find someone better. He just asked, what's your plan? Not sure yet, I said. He nodded. Let me know if you need anything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled out my laptop and logged into our home security system, something Lydia probably forgot I could access remotely. The cameras showed a strange SUV in our driveway, a man I'd never seen before walking our dog, using my coffee thermos, wearing my Broncos hoodie. And there was Lydia, laughing in the kitchen I'd renovated myself during my last leave. Her laughter was a blade, slicing through the memories of our life together. Something shifted inside me. Not anger, exactly. Something colder, clearer. I closed the laptop and pulled out my phone, made a list. Call Wesley, Army buddy who became a lawyer. Check the VA loan terms. Contact Master Sergeant about emergency leave. Review home refinance documents. Something Lydia mentioned casually last year. Check the security on my military pension accounts. I didn't feel sad anymore. I didn't even feel angry. I felt focused, like I was planning a mission. Each task was a step toward reclaiming what was mine, a counterstrike against her treachery. At 600, before my shift started, I sent an email to Wesley with the subject line, "Need legal help, discreet and urgent." His reply came an hour later, "Call me, secure line only." When I hung up from that call, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I didn't need to yell, I didn't need to threaten, I didn't even need to confront her. I just needed to wait and watch. And let her own actions become the trap. But a whisper of doubt crept in. Was I ready for the war this would ignite? The base's stark fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow over my bunk. The security footage played on a loop in my mind, Lydia's laughter a haunting refrain. My phone's list glowed, a battle plan etched in digital ink. Outside, Kunar's dawn broke, painting the desert in blood-red hues, a fitting backdrop for the fight ahead. I was ready, but the stakes were higher than I'd imagined. What was Lydia planning next, and how far would she go to win? What do you uncover when you dig into the life you thought you knew? 3 months later, I was back on American soil. I didn't tell Lydia I was coming home. Didn't call, didn't text, just checked into a motel in downtown Boise under a different name and contacted Wesley. We met at a diner 12 miles outside of town. "You look like hell," he said, sliding into the booth, his eyes scanning me like he could see the weight of Kunar still on my shoulders. "Feel like it too," I replied. Wesley handed me a folder. Everything we discussed, the house deed, loan documents, bank statements, and this. He pulled out a separate paper. "Found something interesting when I was digging into your finances." It was a refinance application with my signature on it. Except it wasn't my signature. Not quite. Someone had tried to copy it but missed details. The middle initial was wrong and the stroke pattern wasn't mine. The forgery was blatant, a taunt from someone who thought I'd never notice. "Lydia did this?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Wesley nodded. 4 months ago. Used the equity to pull out $280,000. 0 cents. Your signature is required for that, since the VA loan is in your name only. Forge my signature, take out a loan against our house, then clear out our accounts and divorce me, I said. "Busy woman." "It gets better," Wesley said. She listed her boyfriend as a co-applicant. He's got a record, 3 DUIs and a fraud charge from 2020. Each revelation was a puzzle piece, forming a picture darker than I'd imagined. I took a deep breath. "What are my options?" "Several," Wesley said. "But first, you need to decide what you want." I thought about it. I want what's legally mine, and I want her to understand consequences. Wesley smiled. "Then here's what we do." The next day, I drove past our house. Her boyfriend's SUV was gone, but Lydia's car was in the driveway. I parked down the street and watched for a while, thought about knocking on the door, confronting her. But that wasn't the plan. The house looked the same, but it felt like a stranger's now, tainted by her betrayal. Instead, I drove to the bank, met with the loan officer who had processed the refinance, showed him my military ID, showed him the real signature on my driver's license, showed him the forged documents. His face went pale. "I'll need to report this immediately." "I understand," I said. "I've already filed a police report." That night, I got a text from Lydia. "Who have you been talking to at the bank?" Dylan said someone was asking questions. I didn't respond. The next day, I went to the county clerk's office, filed paperwork contesting the refinance due to fraud, registered formal notice that no changes to the property could be made without my presence. Each step was a chess move, positioning me to reclaim what was mine. 3 days later, Lydia called. I let it go to voicemail. "Caleb, we need to talk. The bank called about the house. What are you doing? If this is about the divorce, we can discuss it like adults." Like adults, the same words from her email. I still didn't respond. Wesley called that afternoon. They froze the refinance money. "And there's more. Your wife's boyfriend has been driving your truck, right? The one in your name?" "Yeah. He got pulled over this morning, driving on a suspended license from those DUIs. They impounded the vehicle." "Good," I said. "He also had some interesting things in the truck. Prescription pads from the medical clinic where Lydia works. They weren't blank. I closed my eyes. She's been stealing prescription pads? Looks that way. The police are investigating. Hung up and sat on the edge of the motel bed. This was getting bigger than I'd expected. The motel's thin walls seemed to close in, each creak a reminder of the fragility of my plan. Part of me wanted to call Lydia, warn her. Old habits. But then I remembered the security camera footage. My house, my dog, my life, given away like it meant nothing. Boise's neon lights flickered outside, casting a cold glow through the window. No, this was the path now. I couldn't turn back, and honestly, I didn't want to. But how deep did this conspiracy run, and was Lydia a pawn or a mastermind? When does a betrayal become a crime that threatens everything you fought for? I met with the bank fraud investigator the next morning. Name was Henderson, short guy with tired eyes and a soda stain on his tie. This happens more often than you'd think, he said, spreading documents across his desk. Spouse deploys, other spouse sees an opportunity. What happens now? I asked. We've frozen the funds from the fraudulent refinance, but there's a problem. Some of the money's already gone. How much? About half. $121,400.00. I leaned forward. Where did it go? Henderson hesitated. I'm not supposed to share that information. It's my house, my name forged, my money stolen. He nodded slowly, then turned his computer screen toward me. These are the transfers out of the refinance account. I scanned the list. Multiple transfers to someone named Evan Caldwell, not Dylan, someone else I'd never heard of. Who's Evan Caldwell? I asked. Henderson shrugged. Not my department, but you should ask your lawyer to subpoena these records. I called Wesley as soon as I left the bank. Evan Caldwell? He repeated. Let me run a check. An hour later, he called back. Got it. Evan Caldwell is a real estate agent, specializes in quick sales, cash deals. She was planning to sell our house. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Looks that way. The deposits were probably earnest money to get him moving on a listing. But here's where it gets interesting. Caldwell has done business with Dylan Porter before. Dylan Porter, that's her boyfriend? Yes, they've closed 4 deals together in the past 18 months. I sat down on a park bench trying to process this. So this wasn't just Lydia leaving me for some guy. This was what? A planned operation? Maybe, Wesley said carefully. I did some digging into Dylan Porter. He has a pattern. Gets involved with women going through divorce or with deployed spouses. 4 cases I found so far. Each time, the woman's home gets sold well below market value to one of Caldwell's clients. Porter gets a cut, then he moves on. And Lydia, she knew about this? Hard to say. Maybe she's a victim too, or maybe she's in on it. I rubbed my face. This wasn't just about Lydia betraying me anymore. This was something bigger, something calculated, and other military families had been victims. What do we do? I asked. I've already contacted the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, Wesley said. This crosses state lines, involves military personnel and VA loans. They're interested. That night, I sat in my motel room with a coffee, thinking about everything, wondering if Lydia had been playing me our entire marriage, or if she'd gotten swept up in Dylan's scheme, wondering if it even mattered. The coffee grew cold, its bitterness mirroring my thoughts. My phone buzzed. Lydia again. Caleb, please call me. The bank is saying something about fraud and Dylan got arrested for driving your truck. I don't understand what's happening. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed, "Who is Evan Caldwell?" 3 dots appeared as she started typing, then stopped, started again, stopped. Finally, I don't know what you're talking about. $121,400.00, I wrote. Multiple transfers. House listing. No response for 15 minutes. Then, it's not what you think. I turned off my phone and went to bed, but sleep eluded me, the weight of her lies pressing against my chest. The next morning, Wesley called. FBI wants to meet. They've been investigating Porter and Caldwell for months. You're not the first, but you might be the case that breaks it open. For the first time since getting that divorce email, I felt something close to satisfaction. Not because my marriage was over, but because the truth was finally coming out. The motel's stale air felt charged with possibility, a turning point in a battle I hadn't chosen. Boise's morning bustle hummed outside, oblivious to the conspiracy unraveling within its borders. I was ready to meet the FBI, but the question lingered. Was Lydia a victim or a villain? And would the truth destroy her or set me free? Can you trap a predator without becoming one yourself? I met with the FBI agents at their field office in Boise, Agent Ramsey and Agent Fletcher. They recorded my statement, took copies of all the documents Wesley and I had gathered. Your case helps establish a pattern, Agent Ramsey explained, her voice steady but urgent, as if she sensed the stakes. Shows intent, organization, makes it a conspiracy rather than isolated incidents. What about Lydia? I asked. My wife. Ex-wife. The agents exchanged looks. We're still determining her level of involvement, Fletcher said carefully. Did she ever mention financial difficulties, pressure to sell the house? I thought back. She kept saying we were stretched thin, that we should downsize. I didn't see the need. Our mortgage payments were manageable on my salary, Ramsey made a note. When did that start? About 8 months ago, around the time she must have met Dylan. And the refinance? Fletcher asked. Never discussed it with me. She forged my signature while I was deployed. They asked more questions, took more notes. When we finished, Ramsey handed me her card. We'll be in touch. In the meantime, don't confront your wife or Porter. We need to build this case carefully. I nodded. Understood. That evening, I drove to our neighborhood again, parked down the street from our house. Dylan's SUV was back, must have gotten it out of impound. Lydia's car was gone. My phone buzzed, a text from Lydia. We need to talk in person. Meet me at Centennial Park tomorrow. I showed the text to Wesley over breakfast the next day. Don't go, he advised. Nothing good can come from talking to her right now. I won't, I said, but I want to know what she's doing today while she thinks I'm meeting her. We drove to our house at 10:15 a.m., parked across the street. At 10:30, Lydia came out, got in her car and drove away, heading toward Centennial Park. Now what? Wesley asked. Now we wait, I said. 15 minutes later, a car pulled up, real estate agent logo on the door. Evan Caldwell. Dylan came out to greet him. They talked in the driveway, then went inside. Should we follow them? Wesley asked. I shook my head. No need. I installed security cameras last year, interior and exterior. They upload to cloud storage. Wesley smiled. You didn't mention that before. Never came up, I said, pulling out my phone. I opened the security app and angled the screen so Wesley could see. Caldwell and Dylan were in our living room. Caldwell was taking photos. Dylan was pointing at features of the house. I turned up the volume. Should list by the end of the week, Caldwell was saying. I've got a buyer interested already. Cash offer as usual. How much? Dylan asked. $390,000, 0 cents. We list at $430,000, 0 cents. They offer $390,000, 0 cents. Everybody's happy. What about the husband? Lydia says he's causing trouble. Caldwell waved dismissively. Military guys are all the same. They make noise, but they've got deployments, responsibilities. He'll take a settlement to make it go away. I turned to Wesley. You getting this? He was already recording the feed on his phone, every word. I forwarded the security feed access to Agent Ramsey with a short message. Happening now. 25 minutes later, our house was surrounded by FBI vehicles. I watched from down the street as agents led Caldwell and Dylan out in handcuffs. The scene was surreal, like a movie I hadn't signed up for. My home now a crime scene. My phone rang. Agent Ramsey, got them on tape discussing the fraud scheme, she said, plus conspiracy, wire fraud, and attempting to sell property under false pretenses. We're going to need a formal statement from you. Of course, I said. And, Mr. Morrow, your wife just arrived at the scene. She's distressed. I looked down the street. Lydia was standing on our lawn, hands over her mouth, watching as FBI agents carried boxes of documents from our house. What happens to her? I asked. That depends, Ramsey said, on what she knew and on what you want. I watched Lydia for a long moment. 15 years of marriage, good years at the beginning, before whatever this had become. I just want what's right, I said finally. Boise's quiet streets seemed to hold their breath, the weight of justice hanging in the air. But as Lydia's figure blurred in the distance, I wondered, would her tears be genuine? Or just another act? Can justice heal the wounds of a life stolen, or does it only deepen the scars? The federal case moved quickly. Dillon and Caldwell both took plea deals, implicating each other and several other conspirators in what turned out to be a 4-state operation targeting military families. Lydia maintained she knew nothing about the larger scheme, said Dillon had convinced her I was hiding money, planning to leave her with nothing, said the refinance was his idea, she'd just gone along with it. Her claims rang hollow, each word a desperate grasp at innocence I no longer believed. Maybe that was true. Maybe it wasn't. Either way, she agreed to a settlement. Full restitution of the stolen funds, forfeiture of any claim to the house or my military pension, a signed confession about the forgery. In exchange, I didn't press charges. The divorce was finalized 8 months after that email from Kunal. No fault, clean break, all things considered. But the emptiness lingered, a void where trust once lived. On the day the last paperwork was signed, I got a call from Agent Ramsey. Dillon Porter was sentenced today. 7 years for fraud, conspiracy, and identity theft. Caldwell got 10, she said. Thought you'd want to know. Thank you, I said. There's something else, she added. We found evidence they've done this to 13 other military families. Your case helped us build a pattern. Those families might get their money back because of you. After we hung up, I sat on the porch of my rental apartment, watching the sunset, thinking about those other families, other men who deployed thinking their homes and marriages were safe, only to come back to emptiness. The Boise sky burned orange, a fleeting beauty that felt like a promise of healing. I hadn't planned on being the one to bring down Dillon and Caldwell's operation. I just wanted what was mine. But sometimes things work out in ways you don't expect. Yet, the victory felt hollow, tainted by the cost of what I'd lost. My phone buzzed, a text from Lydia. I never meant for things to end this way. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Her words were a ghost, haunting but powerless against the life I was rebuilding. 18 months later, I sold the house. Couldn't stand to live in it anymore. Too many memories, too much betrayal in those walls. I used the money to buy a small cabin outside of Helena, Montana. 3 bedrooms, 12 acres of land, a stream running behind it, no neighbors for miles. The cabin's rustic solitude was a sanctuary, a place where I could finally breathe. I took early retirement from the Army. 22 years was enough. I'd given enough. I got a dog, Labrador named Ranger, started doing furniture restoration for locals. Nothing fancy, but it kept my hands busy and paid the bills. My military pension covered the rest. Sometimes I thought about Lydia, wondered where she ended up. Wesley heard she'd moved back to her hometown in Io, working at another medical clinic, starting over, I guess. Her shadow lingered in my thoughts, a reminder of the life I'd survived. I didn't hate her anymore, didn't much feel anything about her, to be honest. She'd made her choices, and so had I. One evening, I got a letter from a woman in Norfolk, Virginia. Her husband was in the Marines, deployed when Dillon and Caldwell tried to run their scheme on her. The FBI had given her my name as part of the case. You don't know me, she wrote, but you saved our home. Thank you for fighting back when it would have been easier to just walk away. I read it twice, then pinned it to my refrigerator. The letter was a beacon, illuminating the good that had come from my pain. Some days, when the silence got too loud or the memories too sharp, I'd look at that letter and remember that something good had come from all of it. Helena's quiet nights wrapped around me, the stream's gentle flow a soothing counterpoint to the chaos I'd left behind. Last I heard, Dillon was still in prison. Caldwell, too. The system worked, for once. As for me, I was finding my way forward, one quiet day at a time, building something new, something that couldn't be stolen or forged or betrayed, something that was just mine. But as Ranger slept at my feet, I wondered, would the past ever truly let me go?